I do want to switch gears to something that's really in your wheelhouse. You've been leading the effort on investigations, obviously the former chair of the Homeland Security Committee, but now the ranking member on the permanent subcommittee on investigations. The House is doing some hearings today. They've got Daniel Weiss in front of the Judiciary Committee today. What should they be asking him, and how important is this hearing?
Well, they ought to be asking him about all the instances that we've now documented in which the investigation of Hunter Biden was interfered with, that any lead that might have pointed to Joe Biden was blocked. Senator Grassley has a whistleblower into his office that the letter he wrote to Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland is not getting anywhere near the attention it ought to be getting. This whistleblower alleges that the FBI had 40 confidential human sources that had derogatory information on the Bidens. We know because Senator Grassley and I both got an unsolicited briefing from the Foreign Influence Task Force, basically interfering in our election, saying that we were targets of Russian disinformation. Basically, this task force was what my staff calls a catch and kill operation. Find out where derogatory information from on the Bidens was, and then go label it Russian disinformation and basically shut down any further investigation into it. I mean, this indicates massive corruption at the highest levels of federal law enforcement, but it's just what we've been seeing. You go back to James Comey's exoneration of Hillary Clinton, her email scandal, and that cast of characters that edited his exoneration email. That was the same cast of characters that were in charge of the Crossfire Hurricane operation, based on the Steele dossier, that the FBI knew what primary subsource was somebody they were investigating as a Russian spy. And yet they used that to get FISA warrants. They used that to set up the Mueller special counsel. You fast forward to when the FBI picked up the Hunter Biden laptop from Mr. McIsaac and basically on the way out warned him, it's our experience, people don't talk about these things, don't get in trouble. That was their first pre-sabotaging in case the laptop ever became public. And it just followed all the way through 2020, including that unsolicited briefing to Senator Grassley and I. So this is obvious corruption. It's partisan actions taken by partisan actors inside these federal agencies. It needs to be exposed. But, and maybe even greater scandal is the biased media that refuse to hold both sides equally accountable. We wouldn't have this level of corruption in federal agencies if we had a news media that actually was a watchdog, as I said, nonpartisan, holding both sides equally accountable.
So when the House has this hearing today with David Weiss, the special counsel that's looking into the Bidens, one of the big things that apparently Jim Jordan wants to get to is whether or not he has the authority to act. Is that something that you think is important for them to really get to the bottom of, or is that a sideshow?
Well, no, there's contradictions between what he said and Attorney General Merrick Garland. I mean, one of them has been lying to Congress. That's an important issue. But again, I think even more important is just tracking down every one of these instances of interference in the investigation. Why did he allow the more serious tax evasion charges to lapse? The statute of limitations run out on those things. Again, there are so many questions that I'm sure Chairman Jordan will be asking David Weiss. I can't wait to see the transcript.
So let's get back to, one of the things that I've been saying for a while is, and I've been told that I've been saying that I think we need to sort of connect the dots between a lot of the nefarious actions of Hunter and James Biden to Joe Biden. And what some of the folks in this world have said to me is, no, that's not necessarily what bribery is legally. They can do things on his behalf, et cetera, et cetera. But for a while, I thought that these new checks were going to be the smoking gun. This $40,000 check. Democrats have pushed back and said, no. These are just loan repayment checks from Joe Biden or from his brothers and et cetera, back to him from these companies. And they're nothing more than loan repayments. That's it. Where do you come down and how do you explain them?
Well, first of all, this just shows if the FBI actually engaged in a serious investigation of the Bidens, we'd already know this. Again, Congress has a difficult time investigating these. We have to issue subpoenas. Those things are challenged in court. The FBI goes into a bank with a subpoena or warrant. They get to see all the records. It's not that hard to follow financial transactions. You take a look at the bank account where the money came in, and Senator Grassley and I laid that out. All that labyrinth of companies that were obviously set up to launder money. You go to that bank account, you find out where the outflows go. You check out those bank accounts and see where those outflows go. But when it comes to these loans, the question I can't believe nobody else is asking. They're asking about loan repayments, that type of thing, and interest payments. Why not just check to see, was a loan ever made? I mean, I want to see the $40,000 check that Joe Biden made out to James Biden, or the $200,000 check. If these are loans to be repaid, okay, show me where you made the loan.
Right.
Well, that way I'll see his bank account. And again, the FBI could have had this literally in days in an investigation years ago, but they were prevented from actually doing a real investigation in terms of what Hunter Biden's wrongdoing, what that might have resulted in from a standpoint of Joe Biden's wrongdoing.
So one of the things that I've also heard is, Biden has this beach house in Rehoboth. He's done very well for himself on a government salary. Additions have been built, et cetera. One of the folks that I've heard in this area has said, why aren't investigators talking to the contractors and saying, how did you get paid? Who paid you? Where's the check? To start to see if Hunter or James or any other family member is making payments on Joe Biden's behalf for things that materially benefit him.
Well, if we would have maintained the majority after 2020, I would still been chairman of a committee where I could investigate this stuff, and I would have tracked all that stuff down. Unfortunately, we were in the minority in both chambers, and the House had to kind of pick up where Senator Grassley and I left off 2 years earlier. But it's obvious, there have been reports that Joe Biden apparently made $16 million after he left the vice presidency. Where did he make that money? I don't think his book really did that well in terms of selling for royalties. And he also reported assets worth $3.2 million. So where did the $16 million go? What taxes did you pay on that? No, Sean, there are so many questions I have that I would have been investigating in 2021, 2022. But here we are in 2023. I think, James Comer and Jim Jordan are doing a great job, again, filling in the piece of the puzzle that Senator Grassley and I laid out. But again, congressional investigators are hampered. We should have the exact same constitutional authority to do investigations, but over time, our oversight capabilities have atrophied. We haven't done the enforcement, for example, using the sergeant of arms, hauling people in when they're in contempt of Congress. So as a result, administrations just give us the middle finger.
But so that's the nut, the big nut, right? Are we ever going to find out any of this, or is it that Joe Biden will lose or move on and we'll never know? How will we ever know what really happened? Or do you think that Jim Jordan and James Comer have the tools necessary or some way to get to the bottom of this?
Well, again, I think they are, but it does take time. Senator Grassley and I did not have the support of our conference or of our committees to actually issue subpoenas on this. It was viewed as way too political back in 2020. That's not hampering the House, but they still have to go through the investigatory steps. They have to build the case to justify the subpoena. So they're doing this step by step. I know it's painstaking. I know it's frustrating for the public to see this, but they've got to build the case brick by brick, and they're doing it. And that's why now James Comer is saying he's going to be issuing a flurry of subpoenas because now he knows what he needs to subpoena.
Well, he says he's going to subpoena potentially both Biden's brother James and Hunter Biden. Is that a good step? Meaning, look, here's the way I look at this from an impeachment, et cetera, standpoint. If you don't have the public on board, that in a way that they can digest and understand this, then we will maybe go through the motions, but we'll lose the political argument, right? And the question is it the right thing to do to be calling these individuals, knowing what we know in terms of how they're going to act and how they're going to answer?
Yes,
at this time.
Again, I didn't have subpoena power in 2020, so we invited all these Bidens and their business association for voluntary interviews. Of course, they declined. Had I maintained a chairmanship, we would already have these bank records. Again, I'm not second guessing what James Comer is doing. It takes time. You got to build the case, but he's absolutely on the right track here. I think we'll get these bank records. I think it'll show more and more corruption on the part of the Biden family. And I think it will definitely include Joe. I mean, $40,000 just happens to be 10% of $400,000 payment. That's for the big guy. I mean, I think this is all pretty obvious.